Okay, so the next thing that definitely we need to talk about the decline. But before I come to the decline, right, let me discuss one thing briefly. That whenever we talk about, there's a question which comes regarding the Harappan people. So what are the concepts that you are going to write if it is about Harappan people? If it is about Harappan people, so what you may write for the Harappan people? What was their lifestyle?
Usually
agrarian economy, but in fact it is not true. It was not agrarian, urban civilization.
Usually based on trades and all.
But we can't ignore the agriculture also.
Okay.
So it was both agrarian and urban society, right? What else?
Also the respect of women as they consider.
Yes, I think the first point is not that much important. This point is important, right? Whenever you need to analyze the Harappan society, right? So I think what he has discussed in the first point, that is more about their economy rather than their society, right? So if we come to the society, there were few things that we need to discuss, right? Like, what kind of basically the most important thing that normally when we talk about society, so we must talk about the woman, right? And as I told you from the early classes only, that whenever we are talking about society, so status of women is the most important question should be discussed, right? So if it comes to the woman, so what do you think that the status of women was good and bad or bad in society? You just write down, right, society, and you just note down few points. Society. So in society, definitely you must talk about the status of women as good, right? Now, what is the example that you can use? Mostly in this Valley civilization, you'll find that the female figurines have received, right? We find, although almost negligible number of the male figurines. So if female figurines have been received in such a good number, it shows the importance of the women in the society, right? And that is why some historians have also called it matrilineal society, right, or the matriarchal society. So yes, it seems that it was this is a merely argument. That's a merely argument. You must, I'm already warning you that they are saying or they are suggesting it was a matrilineal, matriarchal society, and the much emphasis has been given to the woman, right? But what kind of, as I told you, that whenever you do talk about the status of women, somehow it is linked to their role or their participation in the economy. Unfortunately, any as such source is not talking about their participation in the economy. Most of the women figurines that we have found will find that either they have been imagined as god, right, or goddesses, sorry, or they are they have been made or they have been prepared with the kids, right? So definitely this connection is a very obvious connection. We can't ignore that thing. But yes, in few of the figurines you'll find that the people or the women have been depicted working. So basically, such as threshing of the grains, right, or cooking the food, right. So these kind of things have been these kind of themes have been depicted. So on the basis of what we can say, definitely the women used to play a very important role. Basically in the agrarian society, they were playing the secondary role. So basically, the males used to cultivate the land, but rest of the works were done by women. And that is why the women were respected in the society, and mostly will find that the woman has been depicted in a way, or the importance which has to be given to the woman, it shows that they had they played very important role in the society, and that is why we can consider the woman as respected, right? And apart from that, you can add it with the fertility also, because ultimately the whole success of the civilization was relying on fertility, right? Either of surplus, right, or the population, right? And that is why we can say yes, the women were respected in the society. The next thing that could be discussed here, that what kind of sort of division was there between male and female, right? So as I told you that definitely the society was having there was no as such good source to know about the clear-cut division of the functions and the roles in the economy. But as I told you that roughly it could be said that the secondary works were being done by the women, and that is important. After discussing women, what is the next thing that could be discussed? That definitely, sort of, social structure in the society, right? That normally whenever we talk about society, we need to discuss about the social structure. And if we'll compare the Harappan societies with the contemporary societies, so you'll find that there was a social structure in the contemporary societies. Unfortunately, that social structure has been, and mind you, I'm not talking about the class structure. That's a different thing. There's a social structure. So basically, some division in the name of caste, religion, or any as such division, and which is evident, which is very much evident in the Mesopotamian, in the Egyptian society, that is absent from the Indian, Harappan society, and that idea is missing from the Harappan. That's the second point that you can discuss, right? What next you can discuss? You can discuss about their, the way they like the jewelries, right, or their clothing pattern. So normally you'll find that they had a very simple clothing pattern, right? So they used to, put a simple cloth over, over their body. They normally did not use the stitched clothes, right? And the women were also using very less amount of clothes. They had some special attraction towards the jewelries, right? So this also you can write, right? You can write about the education system, right? So normally there was no proper education system, because we have assumed, as I told you, that education was mostly popular among the upper elite class of the society, and that is where we assume. And the amount of the figurines that we have found, that yes, the toys were available in the society in an abundant manner. So it can be said what these people, mostly the kids, were playing, right? That was the only task they had. Or apart from this, they were working, or they were helping the their mothers mothers in the domestic works, right? So that might be the another thing that could be said, right? So these kind of things we can discuss for the society, or the life of the people, not exactly society, what kind of life was being led by them. So that's all that could be discussed in the society, right? Now the last topic of this Harappan civilization, that is regarding this decline of the Harappan civilization, right? So that is again has been discussed beautifully in your notes, right? So let me discuss this, right? And you just complement it from the notes. So whenever it comes to the decline, right? Whenever it comes to the decline, so that's again a sort of very crucial question, right? And whenever any question is coming on the debate, question is coming on the decline, it should be discussed in a debatable way, right? That there were numbers of arguments, and all the arguments must be given equal weightage. That would be the right way to deal with the question, right? So the first and the most popular argument is about no, it is about Aryan invasion, right? The earliest idea which has been given, right? And I hope you remember the period after 2000 BCE, right? It started declining, and then people started giving different arguments, and of course the most popular idea, that is regarding the the Aryan invasion. And what is the basis of this particular idea? So basically there was a historian called as Ram Prasad Chandra, who came up with this idea of Aryan invasion. What exactly is about Aryan invasion? There was this a graveyard called Cemetery H, right? So in that Cemetery H, we have found certain death bodies, around 37 death bodies, and these were killed by some weapon. And as the weapons were mostly absent from the Harappan civilization, and that is why they are saying it is giving a reference of some attack or invasion of people, right? So somehow, if you remember the Vedic date, or the dates for the invasion of the Aryan, that is roughly kept around 1500 BC, and the process of decline started somewhere around on 2000 BC. So there's a gap of 500 years, right? And I think if it would be around 50 years or 100 years, in that case, we could have thought of this. Okay, there might be one possibility. Was 500 years? That's a great difference between these two. But what kind of evidences has been used by them? Basically, this historian, he is saying the first thing, that there is a term used in Rig Veda, Haryupya. There is a term used in Rig Veda called as Haryupya, and they identified it, or they found the similarity between the Haryupya and Harappa, right? So they are saying that Haryupya is nothing but Harappa, and in fact these people had a counter with the Harappan people, and finally they defeated them because they were not having weapons, they were not having horses, and that is where they defeated that, right? The first thing. The second thing, in Rig Veda, Indra has been called as Purandar, right? And Purandar means somebody who destroys food, right? So they are saying that as the Indra was, basically the god who helped them to destroy the Harappan forts, and that is why they are saying they definitely they have defeated the Harappan, and that is why it is about decline, right? So okay, these are the arguments which were used by them, right? Used by him, right? But again, some other scholars such as P.V. Kane, George Dells, and B.B. Lal, in fact, these people were not ready to accept this idea, and they said, look, there is a major difference of the time frame. The first thing. The second thing, Rig Veda is such a text, you can't exactly fix the timing of the Rig Veda. We have already discussed about the controversy which is related to the timing of the Rig Veda, and they are saying, look, it doesn't say, it doesn't seem correct. The next thing what they are saying, look, if you are taking the help of that, those death bodies, right, the 37 death bodies, right, so the first thing that they all are not belonging to same age, right. If it was about a foreign invasion, in that case they all would have been killed on a same time, but that idea is not saying about that, right. So they are saying that ideas again can be denied. And the third thing, whenever you talk about the end of a civilization, so there might be numerous references for the clashes between the Aryans and the Harappans, right? So if there would be, there would be number of such classes of, Aryans and the, between Aryans and the Harappans. In that case, definitely would have, concluded it that yes, there was a sign of such kind of thing. But again, there is no as such evidence, and that is where this idea has been outrightly negated now, right? So now, what are the other ideas that could be put forward for for the decline of this the Harappan civilization, right? So that idea has been negated. Now people have started discussing about basically the geographical or the change in the weather condition or some other thing. So basically some geographical changes. So now the second thing which has been suggested by some prominent historians, right, that is given in the notes also, right. So basically what they said, what happened during this period around 2000 BC and 1900 BC, that actually the rivers changes course, right. And why did it happen? Because there was some what is called it? There was some change in the tectonic plates, right. There was some movement, and because of that movement, what happened, there was a barricade which obstructed the flow of the river Indus specifically, and there the tributaries of river Indus, right. And because of that, the river Indus stopped flowing, and what happened now there was a sort of lake which got created, and somehow now the Indus people or the Harappans were not getting access to the water, and as a result of that, definitely the whole civilization destroyed or declined, right. But again, this idea is not interpreting completely the or justifying it, the decline of IVC. How come? Because if it is about Indus, so what happened to those civilizations such as or those centers such as Dhalabira, Rakhigarhi, those which were basically in India, right? So somehow it is not giving giving the justified interpretation for the decline of these centers, right? So that idea to some extent was not accepted, right? And then people have started inventing or started discovering some new ideas for the decline of this Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization. So what other ideas that have been put forward? So basically they are saying for Ghaggar something else happened, right? So what, as you do know that Saraswati is basically a river which got disappeared, right? So they are saying that simultaneously there was another process going on, whether this thing or the tectonic plates were moving in the western part, and the same time you will find that the rivers which were flowing through Rajasthan and Gujarat area, they got disappeared, right? And once that got disappeared, so the whole civilization had problems and ultimately it declined. So that's the next argument that could be said, right? Then again, it was again not sort of accepted by most of the people, and then they started doing some other analysis. So one scholar is saying that basically what happened, due to some reason the sea level increased, right? And as the sea level increased, so definitely the coastal areas submerged, right? And at the same time, because of the sea increase, what happened, the salinity of the soil, try to get my point, salinity of the soil increased. And if the salinity increased in the soil, what would be the result of that? Less amount of surplus or the end of the surplus. And if the surplus is ending, so definitely it could be said that it impaired, that civilization declined, right? So that's the next argument. But there was another historian called Gurmeet Singh, right? So he has given a completely different argument. Look, they are saying what Gurmeet Singh is saying, and definitely some other scholars also supported his idea, if you are talking about the decline of Harappans, right? So you need to talk about the balance between the resources and the people, right? So somehow they are saying, this group is saying, or the Gurmeet Singh is saying, कि actually there was a very good balance between the people and the Harappan resources, right? But gradually people have started exploiting the resources, and as a result of that, certain negative, sort of things or negative impacts could be noticed, such as he has analyzed the rainfall pattern in this region, and finally he realized one thing: after 2000 there was a declining pattern could be noticed in the rainfall, right? And that just because of that declining pattern, he is saying, as you can understand, that the surplus could not be created by them, and as a result we'll find that the whole civilization had to decline, right? He is saying like what kind of, he's just giving one example also. As the people from Harappa, they were using the burnt bricks in a large quantity, right? And it meant that they needed the fuel to burn it, right? And they said, what Gurmeet Singh is saying, they were using extensively the timber, right? Or the wood to burn or get the burnt bricks, right? And he is saying just because of that reason, ultimately this area became deforested, right? And as a result of that, as a result of this deforestation, what happened? Now this area was not having good rainfall, and ultimately it has to decline, right? So these are the various arguments for the decline of the Harappans, right? But do you think that any single reason is justifying the decline of the Harappan? There might be one possible factor, right? There might be a possibility that these factors had certain role in the decline of the Harappan, but we can't say any single factor caused the decline completely of caused the complete decline of the Harappan civilization. And that is why ultimately we need to conclude it in a different way. Now, what might be the best conclusion for it? So basically they are saying, look, ultimately if it is about, there were two things that we must note down. The first, there are few centers which definitely decline completely, such as if we'll talk about Kalibangan, we'll talk about Rakhigarhi, or sorry, if we'll talk about Harappa, Mohenjo-daro and certain other centers, right? These all of a sudden ended. Try to get my point, right? There is a layer called as mature Harappan, and again, after that there is no as such layer which could be connected or which could be said as late Harappan, right? So it actually tells us about the sudden decline of some of the centers, whether some sites even in the late Harappan phase continued, right? So as if the situation is like that, and the second thing which is also very important, that whenever we find the continuity, right, we don't find that the races got changed. Normally we have analyzed the races which are profoundly found in Harappan civilization, and we'll find out of those, like I hope you understand races like Negroid, Mongoloid, Australite, right, and Mediterranean. So out of these, all those could be seen in Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization, but Mediterraneans were basically in majority, right? So if we'll analyze the racial pattern even in the late phase, we'll find that the same people continued. So if the same people continued, so what happened to them that they had to leave this urban civilization, right? And they had to go for this, sort of again to this rural culture and rural civilization, right? So that's a sort of, complicated idea. So now instead of talking about decline, we have started emphasizing on a different point, and that is about ruralization rather than decline. Getting my point, right? So there was an urban culture, right? There was an urban civilization which definitely attracted our, definitely it attracted us, right, to that civilization. But once it got ruralized, right? People, did not focus or did not emphasize much on that, right? So it was a rural culture, and rural cultures are not very specific, right? It is a very common thing, in most of the part of the world, and that is why people are saying it was not the end of the Harappan civilization, rather it was the ruralization of the Harappan culture, right? As there was some problem with the trade and commerce, and maybe their surplus creation has gone down, and as a result of that, what is happening? Now they are not having that political structure, and if the political structure is not there, right? So definitely, and of course the surplus is not there, so the specialization of craft and trade and commerce is also not there, right? Now they are saying if these kind of things are not there, political structure is also not there. And if the political structure is not there, so the relationship with the other civilization also got ended, right? Because if political structure is there, so this political structure is ultimately facilitating these kind of things, right? So that also got ended. And at the same time, even the late Harappans, they continued the same pottery, right? Same sort of other stuff, and that is why we say it was not about the decline, it was more about the ruralization. And as you do know that immediately after this decline of the Harappan, we do find certain cultures in the Gujarat, Rajasthan and Maharashtra area which is known as Chalcolithic culture. Like I hope you might have read that chapter from NCERT, the Chalcolithic, and you must be knowing about this Jorve, Nevasa, Daimabad, Prakash, Inamgaon, Chandoli, right? So all such centers, these are the Chalcolithic centers, and they continued with the same pottery, red and black pottery, right? So it has been said that instead of decline, it's better to talk about ruralization, and the next term that could be used, that was diffusion. As the weather or sort of geographical environment was not suiting to them, and that is where they preferred to migrate some other areas, but the traditions was definitely carried forward by them, right? And ultimately they became ruralized culture, right? And they diffused from that region, right? So instead of talking about decline or using the term decline, these terms are more suitable to the end of the Harappan civilization. Clear? Right? Every topic and ideas have been given in the notes, right? So very simply you can write your answer, frame your answer from there. I hope conceptually it is now very clear to you, right? And it is not about sort of any unique thing that you are supposed to write. You have to just discuss one by one all the points, right? So that's end of the Harappans, right? And as I told you that just because of that diffusion, ultimately we do find that now what is happening, that Chalcolithic cultures are coming into existence. So now if it is about Chalcolithic, so one thing that could be understood very clearly sorry, if it is about Chalcolithic, so as you can understand one thing, copper was locally available, right? And that is where they could use copper, right? But now because of that absence of the political structure, tin was not available, right? And that is where they had to rely on copper only, and that is where this society again started using this stone, because they did not have any hard metal to use, and that is why it is known as Chalcolithic culture. And here we need to understand about this Chalcolithic culture, right? So you just do one thing, in tomorrow's class you come after reading that Chalcolithic society properly, and we again won't discuss about the factual informations for this Chalcolithic, right? So you come after reading about those popular not sites exactly, there were some popular cultures, right? Like Jorve was a different culture, right? And Inamgaon was a different culture, right? So in that way you just cover those kind of things, and we'll discuss some other things such as their economy, their polity, right? What kind of what possibilities they had to convert themselves into an urbanized culture. So these are the themes that we'll be discussing for Chalcolithic, and we maximum probably will try to finish Chalcolithic tomorrow only, right? Because it don't have it doesn't have much content, right? Small concept, only the ideas should be very clear, that's it, right? So tomorrow we'll be finishing this Chalcolithic.